So with 9 of 36 races complete, 25% of the season down, we are already starting to see some of these, starting to get an idea of who the real top dogs this season are going to be. Of course, this is easier said than done because compared to last season, even though we have 8 different winners in 9 races, the gap between the top dogs and the rest of the field has really gotten closer. It's not as huge of a gap as it was last year. So much so that I'll argue there is no clear best driver yet. Like, if I had to pick a championship 4 right now, it would be Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, William Byron, and Ross Chastain. Of course, Ryan Blaney being the guy who has won the most stages. William Byron, the only multi-time winner this season. Chase Elliott, the most consistent driver this season, who has the best average finish this season so far. And then Ross Chastain, who has been the biggest surprise this season, him and Trackhouse Racing. And this is a great place to start because I did not expect Ross Chastain to be good with Trackhouse. Like, I expected him, when I made my playoff predictions, I said that Ross Chastain will be more of the same because he's basically driving the same equipment as he had with Ganassi. But this next-gen car has, with really leveling the playing field, and Trackhouse Racing has taken full advantage of the new car. Him and Daniel Suarez. And Suarez has been another surprise to me. Not as big as Chastain, but I said Suarez, I expected improvement for Suarez, but even then, I expected improvement as in going from a 25th place car to a 20th place car. I didn't expect him to compete for a playoff spot and potentially winning a race. Now I really think Suarez will get a win down the road. I am fairly certain of it. He has looked pretty fast especially on the bigger tracks and the road courses, and on the dirt he also looked pretty good. It looked like he was about to win the race if Mother Nature just played along and let him have it, but can't have them all, I guess. Anyways, moving on to Storehouse Racing, Eric Amarola, retirement tour, the retirement tour guy this season. He's been a big surprise. The fact that he was the only driver to start off the season with three top tens says all you need to know. And ever since then, he has been slipped a bit under the radar, but he is still in solid position to get to the playoffs. But the best driver in Storehouse Racing has been, in my opinion, Chase Briscoe. He has been a huge surprise. The fact that he already won a race this early, and also the fact that he came pretty close to winning a second one at Bristol Dirt if he tried something different with Tyler Reddick. Speaking of Tyler Reddick, let's put him up there. He's been a surprise to me. Briscoe, I didn't predict Briscoe to be in the playoffs, but that's mostly because the playoff field was just way too deep, and I thought it would be very hard for him to even win a race. I am so glad he proved me wrong because I really love Chase Briscoe, and I can't wait to see what he does in the future. Tyler Reddick has been another driver that has been really surprising. I didn't expect him to be this good right off the bat. I know he hasn't won a race yet, and I predicted that he will win one race before the season started. But the fact that he came pretty close to winning 2 races, especially the Bristol Dirt race, and the fact that he's looked so fast and has led a lot of laps this early in the season, I am convinced that he's going to win more than one race this season. All he needs is a little bit of luck. That's all he needs. Chase Elliott, he has been right where I expected him. Sure, he hasn't won a race, but he's looked pretty consistent, and that's what I expected. Like, if you're not winning races, at least be consistent. Larson, I mean, you could say he's been slightly disappointing. If I made this video a few weeks earlier, I could say that he has been slightly disappointing, maybe. But now he's turned it up a little bit. A few good runs at Richmond and the Bristol Dirt race would do it to you. He's got 2 top 5s in the last 3 races, so he's shaking off a bit of that championship hangover, and he also got himself into the top 10 in points. So, yeah. Also, as a matter of fact, on that note, Hendrick Motorsports, they have been really still, even with Trackhouse Racing improving, Hendrick Motorsports, they're still the best team in NASCAR. They have all 4 of their guys in the top 10 now that Larson got himself in the top 10 after that the great performance he had at Bristol Dirt. Speaking of Hendrick Motorsports, Byron, I'm going to say he has been a huge surprise because, yes, I had him winning 2 races, but I didn't expect him to get those 2 races so soon. So if you win 2 of the first 8 races, that means you're probably going to win more down the line, and maybe a 3rd race is down the road for Byron. But right now, the fact that he is the only multi-time winner this season, that's been a huge surprise. Alex Bowman has also been surprising, not because he's won a race, because, again, I expected Bowman to win races. But I say Bowman is more. What has really surprised me about Alex Bowman has been his consistency. That is something that he struggled a lot with last year. And I gotta say, Bowman having one of the 5 best average finishes, like in the first quarter of the season. That is all I really needed from him. I didn't really need him to win a race this early. I know I had him winning, just like William Byron, I had Alex Bowman winning 2 races this season, but what I was really looking forward to was his consistency, and that has really been a great showing. Like, what has really surprised me about Bowman has been his consistency. Speaking of Hendrick Motorsports, like, biggest, rival, quote unquote, Joe Gibbs Racing. Kyle Busch, being the best driver in Joe Gibbs Racing, he is right where I expected him to be. He's been the best driver at Joe Gibbs Racing, so him leading the Vanguard, you could say it's a bit surprising because I didn't expect him to lead the Vanguard for Gibbs. But then again, the gap between him, Hamlin, and Truex is not really that big to where I would be surprised if one of those 3 was like the main guy for JGR for the season. But yeah, he's been the best driver at Joe Gibbs Racing by far. Truex has been slightly disappointing. He has stayed out of, he has been a bit consistent before that Martinsville race. Like in the first 7 races, he was a bit consistent, but then Martinsville, the track conditions weren't really up to par, but Truex didn't even sniff the top 10 of Martinsville. And Martinsville has been one of his best tracks ever since he went to JGR. So, and Bristol Dirt, he led the most laps at the inaugural race last year. So, again, it's just a 1 race sample size, but I expected Truex to be like, at the very least, be in the mix for like a top 10. The fact that I didn't do it, yeah, it's been disappointing. Christopher Bell, if I made this video like a month earlier, I would say Christopher Bell has been one of the bigger disappointments this season, but just like Larson, he has turned it up quite a little bit. He's most likely going to have to win because with several of the mid-pack guys getting wins and locking themselves into the playoffs, it looks like Christopher Bell is going to have to do the same. But the biggest disappointment, arguably, to me, has been Denny Hamlin. I don't care that he won at Richmond. Those first 6 races were an absolute disaster. Some of it has been bad luck, but some of it has also been driver errors like Las Vegas and Atlanta. Those have been like, those were objectively his fault. But after he won at Richmond, I really expected Hamlin to turn it around. And then he kind of went back to he kind of dropped back to what has been the mean this season. Arguably even worse because Martinsville, he finished 3 laps down and in 28th. He was an absolutely a non-factor. He was lapped down by the end of stage 1. And then at Bristol Dirt, he had engine problems. And he dropped out of the race early. So, 2 weekends after that Richmond win, 2 weekends that have been an absolute disaster for him. And heading into Talladega next, like, I know Talladega is one of Hamlin's best tracks, but then, again, anything can happen. So going out to Penske, moving on with Penske, Blaney, he has been right where I wanted him. I'm going to say Blaney, has not really surprised me because I expected this improvement to come from Blaney, like him competing for wins. If his pit crew wasn't really screwing him over, he could have won. He could have a race won by now. But I kind of expected Blaney to make the jump and be the best Penske driver this season, and right now he is. So, I'm not surprised about Ryan Blaney being the best driver of Penske because this is what I expected from him. This is exactly what I expected from him. Logano, same thing. I mean, Penske overall, they also have a lot of experience with like spec cars in other racing series like the V8 supercars and IMSA, IndyCar as well. So it's not really surprising to see Blaney and Logano like running up towards the front and being like in the top 3 in points right now because these spec cars. The next gen car being a spec car, Team Penske works very well with spec cars. I'm not really surprised about either Blaney or Logano. The most surprising driver to me has been Hendrick. I'm not gonna say he's a huge surprise because his season has been, outside of that Daytona 500 win, his season has been like kind of what I expected from him. But that Daytona 500 win is the main reason why I got Hendrick as a surprise because just like Chase Briscoe, I didn't have Hendrick winning a race this season. I had him locking himself into the playoffs, but on points. I had Hendrick making it to the playoffs on points and just barely sneaking in. And even then, going even further, I thought Hendrick's first career win would come on a road course. The fact that he came in the Daytona 500 and the fact that he gave that win gave Roger Penske like the 2 car, which is the flagship car at Penske. The fact that Penske won, that the flagship car won the 500, and it was Hendrick, not Rusty Wallace, not Kurt Busch, not even Brad Keselowski. It was Austin Hendrick, a rookie, who put that car in victory lane. That by itself makes this season a surprise. His season a surprise for him so far. Speaking of rookies, the most disappointing rookie this season to me has been Harrison Burton. Honestly, I've been debating on whether to put him here or here because there is an argument to be made that he was rushed to the Cup Series and maybe this was to be expected. I mean, I didn't have Harrison Burton anywhere near the playoffs at all. And, of course, some of it has been bad luck. And he's actually, turning out a few top 20s. So it's very hard to say if he's a disappointment or like a huge disappointment. I'm going to be nice to Harrison and say that he's been slightly disappointing and not like a huge disappointment like he was at the start of the season. Like most of that has been bad luck, but he's also starting to turn his season around. Chris Buescher has been, there, I guess. Speaking of RFK racing as well, Keselowski, his season has been like, if you look at his stats, his season has been pretty neutral, but that 100-point penalty and the fact that he's gonna have to win now to make it into the playoffs, because I don't think he's going to be able to make up that 100-point gap with RFK. Still, even with the next gen car, RFK is still a mid-pack team, and I had Keselowski in the playoffs. So that 100-point penalty automatically makes the start of this season, a huge disappointment for Keselowski. Even if some details, like with NASCAR being, NASCAR's lack of transparency, even if some of those details are kind of sketchy, the fact of the matter is, a 100-point penalty, that's huge, honestly. So again, Cole Custer, again, another one of the more disappointing drivers this season. I'm gonna say he's low key one of the more disappointing drivers. I'm gonna say, because you see Briscoe competing for wins, Amarola being consistent, and speaking of Kevin Harvick, he's just hanging in there. The guy that you really expect, people were looking at Cole Custer as the guy that really needed to step it up this season, and unfortunately he hasn't. You could arguably say that he had the most to prove, that he has the most to prove at Storehouse Racing, but it really hasn't, in my opinion. Stonehouse, another driver who has been a huge disappointment. I'll argue that he is the biggest disappointment this season if you're looking at the numbers alone. Of course, that's debatable. But if you're looking at the stats alone, then yeah, Stonehouse is the most disappointing driver this season. He has been involved in a lot of wrecks, a lot of bad finishes. He's only had a few good races, like at Auto Club, and that was like his only one good race. And after that race, like, people expected Stonehouse to have like a good season and be in the playoffs. Like, I thought, man, after watching that Auto Club race, I thought Stonehouse was gonna be like a factor for, you know, a lower end playoff seed on like, and it would be like on watch for a win at either Daytona or Talladega. But unfortunately, this season hasn't gone that much for him. Ty Dillon, I sometimes forget Ty Dillon is even in the Cup Series, because that 42 car, I just don't see it making much noise. But when I look at the finishing order, he always brings it home mid-pack, and that's a good thing. Same goes for Justin Haley. The same thing I said about Ty Dillon can be said about Justin Haley. I sometimes forget both of these guys are in the Cup Series. They don't make much noise during the race, but when you look at the numbers and the running order, then you realize that, oh, this guy's finished mid-pack. You know, they quietly just bring it home mid-pack, and like, that's about it. Also, Ty Dillon, he got a great show in the Bristol Dirt Race, so you could say that's a slight surprise. But I'm not gonna say Ty Dillon is a surprise simply because of just one race, unless that one race is like a big deal, like Austin Cindric. But I digress. Michael McDowell, he's been right where I expected him to be. The people who thought that McDowell would build his success off of the 2000, a lot of people are gonna say that McDowell's season has been disappointing because they expected him to build off of his 2021 success, and he hasn't done that. I mean, sure, but you guys gotta realize that McDowell was only decent in 2021 for like the first half of 2021. In the second half of 2021, that's when he reverted back to the team's mean. That's when he reverted back to the mean, and this has continued on in 2022, I guess. Todd Gilliland, many people are gonna say that Todd Gilliland has been a surprise, but I don't think so. And the main reason why is just like Ryan Blaney. I expected Todd Gilliland to be an upgrade over Anthony Alfredo, because when Anthony Alfredo made it to the Cup Series, a lot of people knew that they had very low expectations for him, because he had zero experience, like zero full-time experience in any of the top 3 national series in NASCAR. Todd Gilliland, on the other hand, he had full-time experience. Sure, it was in the Truck Series, but he's had full-time experience, which is more than what Alfredo can have. So the fact that he's already an upgrade over Anthony Alfredo is not that surprising to me, because I expected this to be an upgrade. Cody Ware, this is gonna be a very interesting. This is gonna be a very interesting take I have about Cody Ware's season. Yes, he is among the full-time Cup drivers. He is in last place, but the fact that Rick Ware Racing, they are no longer like the rolling chicanes we were accustomed to seeing like last season. The fact that they, instead of finishing 10 laps down, they finished like 3 or 4 laps down. As a matter of fact, in the Bristol Dirt Race, Cody Ware managed to finish on the lead lap. So honestly, even if Cody Ware is not having the finishes, the fact that he is staying on the lead lap or not finishing the race as many laps down as he was last year, that is honestly an improvement. Again, I'm not gonna say Cody Ware is a surprise this season, because number one, the finishes aren't there, but also because, like I said about Todd Gilliland, I expected this improvement to come from Rick Ware Racing. When I say that I expected improvement from Rick Ware Racing, I didn't expect it like in the finishing. Of course, Cody Ware has better average finish, but I expected it to come more like in the speed department, like not finishing a race like multiple laps down, and they have managed to do just that. So they have fulfilled my expectations. They haven't exceeded them, but they have fulfilled them. Austin Dillon also has been largely on the same boat, like, having an Austin Dillon type of season, just running mid-pack, few top 5s there, a few top 10s here and there. Kurt Busch, he started off the season hot. Like in the first 5 races, he had 2 top 5s, and in the first 5 races, and like every race in the top 20. But ever since then, he has reverted a bit back. Like a bad race at Coda, a mechanical failure at Richmond, a crash at Bristol Dirt, and of course he has had a good finish at Martinsville sandwiched in between, but he has kind of reverted back to the mean, kind of where I expected him to perform. He's still in position to get himself into the playoffs, though, so I'm not going to write him off just yet. A guy that I'm really starting to write off, though, is his teammate, Bubba Wallace. He finished second in the 500, and with the success that Kurt Busch had, you'd think that Bubba would be, running like 20th in points or something like that. Not really. Bubba has been close to, or I don't know if he has fallen out of the top 20 yet, but he is pretty close to falling out of the top 20. And while I didn't expect Bubba to make it into the playoffs, I expected him to be in the mix, kind of like with Kurt Busch. Of course, between the 223.11 cars, I had Kurt Busch making the playoffs and not Bubba, but I expected Bubba to be just right there with Kurt, just like a few spots below, like around. If Kurt Busch is like a 15th place car, Bubba is a 20th place car. But there have been several races where not only is Kurt Busch running bad, but Bubba is running just as bad. Like for example, that Richmond race. Kurt Busch dropped out of the race early, or he was multiple laps down due to a mechanical failure. Bubba was nowhere to be seen. He was mostly like a 20th, 25th place car. I believe he even fell to 30th at one point. Martinsville, he was a complete non-factor again. And I gotta call a spade for a spade. Again, I'm not hating on Bubba or anything. I like Bubba Wallace, but I also gotta be critical of him because a lot of people have been overrating him, saying that Bubba was gonna win 2 races and make it to round of 12 last year. That didn't even come close to happening. I mean, he got the first career win, but you gotta do more than just scoring wins. If you're not going to score wins, at least be consistent. And Bubba hasn't been consistent. The only good finish he has is the Daytona 500. So I cannot put him any higher than this. Erik Jones. If I made this list a few weeks earlier, I would have put Erik Jones as a surprise because he was really having a lot of good runs. But ever since then, Jones has gotten like this reputation of being this like late race caution clock. At Las Vegas, what happened at Phoenix as well. Also at Bristol Dirt. He has this penchant for like getting caught up in somebody else's mess during stage 3, which it's not really ideal. So you could say he has reverted back to the mean. I didn't expect any Erik Jones to make it into the playoffs anyways. Of course, he surprised me earlier in the season with that great race at Fontana. But outside of that, he hasn't really done much. And finally, Corey LaJoie. Just like Erik Jones, outside of that 5th place finish at Atlanta, which was his career best, by the way, so shout out to that. But outside of that, he hasn't really done much. But at the same time, he hasn't been disappointing either. His season has been pretty much the same as last year's, which, I mean, it's not a bad thing. I'm not gonna criticize him for it. I mean, he's driving for Hendrick Motorsports, so there's only so much he can do. But anyways, yeah, that's it. Here's my list again. All of this is my opinion. and this is also based on the expectations that I had for each driver at the start of the season. So again, this is why you see these rankings the way I am. But yeah, that's the end of this quarterly review, everyone.